Welcome to another edition of the Big News Roundup. I'm Bill Thomas, and here's what's happening right now. A Democratic candidate for mayor calls on dozens of violent gangs to help him take back his city from federal ICE agents. Following the recent tragic killings in Minnesota, the number of radical left-wing agitators who are buying firearms and joining gun groups is now growing by leaps and bounds. And President Trump takes his war of words against scammer Ilhan Omar to unprecedented heights as he makes a bold declaration concerning her potential future here in the USA. Also, Iran's supreme leader makes yet another dire threat concerning a potential war in the Middle East. And a legendary performer makes the blunder of a lifetime when she incorrectly announces a long-dead musician as a top winner at this year's Grammy Awards. I hate when that happens. All this and a bunch more is coming up right now on the Big Roundup. We have a great deal to get to today, and we begin here in a scene straight out of the movies. A Democratic candidate for mayor in one of Southern California's largest cities is now actually urging thousands of violent gang members to join his crusade, band together to safeguard their city from federal law enforcement. America, you can't make this stuff up. In a provocative video declaring that his city, Long Beach, needs to be completely ICE-free as soon as possible, the candidate, Rogelio Martinez, directly called on the leaders of 55 brutal gangs to gather alongside him at City Hall in a provocative show of force. This guy's some brain surgeon. Without naming them individually, he then goes on to specifically encourage gangs who come from a number of different immigrant communities and ethnicities, including Latinos, Cambodians, and others, to unite and help him take back their city from occupying ICE agents. He then adds that right now their participation is urgently required because the city's leaders simply aren't doing anything at all to effectively deal with the problem, and the local police are completely powerless to do anything about ICE as well. According to reports, Martinez now claims that he made his little video as part of a radical and fresh approach to draw attention to what's currently happening in cities that are predominantly Hispanic. He also says that his true intentions were to show that everyone is part of the same community, that he never meant to harm anybody, and that in no way did he ever mean to encourage or incite any type of violence whatsoever. However, Martinez goes on to reiterate that enough is enough, that ICE definitely needs to go, and that this is the only way he knows how to get them to leave town peacefully. They ain't going anywhere, son. In the meantime, he's currently set to appear on the upcoming November ballot as one of 5 declared candidates who are vying to lead their city of nearly 500,000 people. Final thought, and this is the News Roundup Lowdown. I got to tell you, I'm an enormous fan of big city mayors who, as a general rule, launch campaigns with promises of creating opportunity, improving schools, maybe lowering taxes, reducing crime, and a bunch of other worthwhile junk. But this genius wannabe mayor is running a campaign predicated on stopping federal law enforcement officers from doing their jobs. And how's this for a strategy? He tries to launch his dingbat campaign by soliciting the help of gang members. Now, look, I don't know a great deal about gangs or, for that matter, mayoral politics. But do the basic math, and if you really try to get 55 gang leaders to show up at City Hall in some kind of a twisted sister show of solidarity, there's a high likelihood that things might go kind of sideways. Yeah, I saw West Side Story. I know firsthand what happens. And to my understanding, rival gangs are generally not always on the best of terms, and a bit of separation might be more of a nifty way to kick off a morning chat at City Hall, or an evening chat. Maybe this Mr. Martinez fella kind of wants to rethink his strategy. Oh, by the way, if this guy really wants to be a politician fighting on behalf of law-breaking illegal immigrants, and all while protesting federal law enforcement agents, you got to think bigger. Think about moving to Minnesota and running for governor. They love people like this guy. And that job opens up in November of this year. Yeah, just a friendly reminder that disgraced Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, he will not be running for a third term as Minnesota governor. I always say, think big or go home. All right, switch things up just a bit now. Turn our attention to an intriguing story involving Democrats, the protests in Minneapolis, and the Second Amendment right to bear arms. In a surprising turn of events, a growing number of radicals, leftists, and liberals, they're a lovely bunch, have apparently undergone a complete change of heart and strategy and are now collectively rushing to buy firearms. They're going to gun up with Daisy air rifles. According to reports, a number of left-leaning gun advocacy groups now say that ever since the recent killing of protester Alex Preddy in Minneapolis, the demand for firearms training has skyrocketed to the point where they can hardly keep up with the surge. Go figure. They'll say that the shocking turnaround is widespread across our entire nation and that it includes a growing number of women, members of the LGBT community, and others as well. Now, experts on the matter speculate that the recent shootings in Minneapolis likely created a sort of a political awakening on the left concerning the Second Amendment, potentially resulting in a seismic shift on their views about gun ownership and further opening their eyes to the need to buy firearms in order to protect themselves from a tyrannical government. Apparently, the sky is falling. Everyone is now advised to run scared and gun up. In case you're not aware by now, shooting victim Alex Preddy held a valid license to carry a concealed weapon, and he actually had a firearm in his possession shortly prior to his untimely death late last month. Since then, gun clubs from coast to coast say they've been experiencing a massive influx of different left-leaning groups who are anxious to join their organizations. And they say that right now, people on the left are increasingly motivated because they're scared and angry, and that they're looking to equalize the current power imbalance as well, and that they're simply sick and tired of being steamrolled over by ICE. Now, as a result, a growing number of protesters are now reportedly carrying firearms wherever they show up to demonstrate against ICE, with some groups actually urging their followers to serve, as an example, become armed observers and use their weapons to guarantee the safety of everyone involved. You know, the odd thing is they're being played right now, and they don't even know it. It's kind of pathetic. Final thought, and this is what we call the News Roundup Lowdown. Now, let me take a shot at this one. Left or right, tall, short, thin, portly, black, white, and all the rest. Amendment number 2 says something about the right of the people to keep and bear arms. It shall not be infringed. Outstanding. We're all on the same page. Take the training, buy the firearm, exercise your rights, and try real hard not to shoot yourself in the foot or put yourself in harm's way. Guns, they're not toys, man. Also, really think this through. It all sounds a bit reactionary, and here's the real deal. The Trump administration is doing right now exactly what previous administrations campaigned on, which is to find people who are breaking the law, illegal immigrants, detain and then deport them, and all while attempting to maintain law and order. And by the way, to avoid all that nonsense, they are right now offering a very generous payday to those same illegal immigrants to self-deport. Nothing inhumane is happening here. You get a free ride home and $2,600 in your pocket. Now, in certain parts of the country, these law enforcement efforts are being met with conflict by local and state leadership. Minneapolis, just as an example, would appear as though leadership is actually encouraging anarchy by doing all they can to interfere with the work of federal agents. And as a result, people have gotten hurt. And as we all know, 2 people have been killed. I'll tell you, for the liberals who are perpetually lobbying for gun control to now suddenly rise up, see the light and buy a gun, tread lightly. If you're packing a .22 and going up against dozens or hundreds of federal law enforcement agents working a lawful mission, your day will not end well. All right, change things up now and shine our spotlight once again on the Minnesota Democrat who's directly in the eye of the storm concerning her state's staggering multi-billion-dollar fraud scandal. Just when you thought it couldn't get any worse for her, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar is now accused of being linked directly to the massive fraud schemes by President Trump himself, and he's taking his increasingly aggressive stance against her to an entirely new level. I checked it out. I scoped it out. On a scale of 1 to 10, this is level 14, man. In a brutal rant on social media, the president now calling for Omar either to be put behind bars or tossed out of our country entirely, saying that, in his opinion, the fraud she's responsible for, it's much greater than any of us previously believed. Additionally, he claims that former Biden administration officials, they knew for years about what was going on in Minnesota, and that rather than acting on the information, they simply chose to do absolutely nothing about it at all. It's what's referred to as, you might want to write this down, by the way, it's what's referred to as BYHITSS. It's called bury your head in the sand syndrome. Yeah, it actually exists. As a result, Trump now argues that both scammer Ilhan Omar and her terrible pals from Somalia should all be tossed into the slam or into the clink, or perhaps even worse, in his words, sent back to the country of origin, their country of origin. The president doesn't end his diatribe there. Yeah, he goes on to heap further abuse on Tim Walz, accusing the Minnesota governor of either being the most corrupt government official in American history or the most incompetent, take your pick, or maybe actually a combo of both. They call that the political combo platter, adding that an absolute idiot should have known exactly what was going on. Now, in the meantime, up to this point, neither Omar nor Walz have been directly implicated in the fraud schemes themselves. However, we should find out more about the entire scandal shortly because early next month, and check this out, mark it down on your calendar, Walz is finally scheduled to testify on Capitol Hill before the House Oversight Committee. Governor Timbo, come on down. Let's have a little chat. Final thought, Tim. This is the News Roundup Lowdown, and here's the way I see it. And first up, a heartfelt thank you to President Donald Trump. Yeah, our spies tell us at 47 watches the big News Roundup every day. He's been carefully monitoring everything that we've been saying all along. He checked out your comments as well. You've been agreeing with us, and he's saying now the exact same thing. And here's what the chief is saying. He's saying lock her up or push her out. Hundreds of millions of dollars worth of fraud in her district. Inexcusable. She didn't need to be a rocket surgeon to know what was happening on her watch. And how'd she get all that dough, an estimated 30 million clams, in her bank account? We all want to know. Go get her, Mr. President. You know, actually, at this point, to be honest, I think 47's being a bit tough on her. After all, last week, somebody poured some apple juice or some kind of dreadful liquid on her sweater, which looked like one of the fancy ones from that J.C. Penney catalog. I wonder if Editor Pranov the Magnificent, I wonder if he has a clip of that tragic event that she lived through. That is actually nothing short of a miracle. Also, don't forget to bring your popcorn and other refreshments to next month's big hearing when Governor Walz is going to try and two-step his way through an explanation into the billions and billions of dollars worth of fraud in his state. This will be fun. It's kind of a guy who would try to sell a 40-year-old Buick to a blind man, tell him it's a brand new car. And let's see how he tries to wiggle his way out of this one. And it ain't gonna be pretty. Our shift gears now and focus on the extremely dangerous geopolitical implications regarding the recent military purge in communist China. According to reports, by methodically ridding himself of some of his top generals, Chinese leader Xi Jinping, he looks good right there, but you got to throw on some Levi's and maybe a tank top. You got to casualize when you're a global dictator, man. He has now concentrated command power in the hands of one man, and that would be himself. He's the guy in charge. Experts say that, in particular, by arresting a general recently who was his former childhood friend and close ally, Xi has intentionally cleared his path of anyone who would have the authority to stand up to him regarding a potential military attack on the neighboring island of Taiwan. And you better not do it on Trump's watch. They go on to point out that the timing of the move is especially noteworthy due to the rapidly approaching 2027 deadline, which Xi has personally alluded to as a possible invasion of Taiwan. Furthermore, they say that moving forward, Beijing is likely to spend the immediate future by doing everything in their power to push their island neighbor to the brink as Xi actively prepares his military to take the next step, something we are all watching and very carefully. Now, some additional headlines we're also keeping a very close watch on right here in the fabulous News Roundup newsroom. First up, Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khomeini, warns that any attack against his country by the U.S. would unquestionably spark a regional war involving the entire Middle East, while also promising to deal a heavy blow to anyone who attacks his nation. Be quiet, old man. He's a handsome, dapper guy. I like that nice beard of his, but again, the outfit, it's just not very Western. You know, in the meantime, while he's busy lobbing verbal grenades at our country, one of his daughters actually lives right here in America, where up until recently she was teaching medicine at Emory University. Moving along, Russian state television now urging the Kremlin to use nuclear weapons in order to target the Elon Musk-owned Starlink satellite system, arguing that the high-speed internet network has now become indispensable for Ukraine on the battlefield. And much closer to home, according to new official estimates, our country is rapidly on the way to recording our very first population decline in history, decades before previously predicted. And thanks to President Trump's immigration crackdown, that unprecedented drop could actually occur as early as this year, just around the corner. And now a quick gander at a bit of showbiz news, and we kick things off today with a fallen Hollywood superstar who's hoping to make an amazing comeback by playing the lead role in an all-time Christmas classic. According to reports right now, 62-year-old Johnny Depp running around on a movie set in London looking completely unrecognizable as he tackles the legendary role of none other than old and grumpy Ebenezer Scrooge. It's in a brand new version of the Dickens classic A Christmas Carol. You know, to be honest, Johnny Depp has looked unrecognizable for a long time. And now, more accurately, he looks doubly unrecognizable. But he's still a handsome cat. Editor Pranav the Magnificent, show us a picture of Depp, or Depp if you would, please. You know, this time around, he chose the wrong project, in my mind. A Christmas Carol, that's already been made hundreds of times. And for his next picture, he had to do something new, creative, unique. For instance, maybe another one of those Pirate of the Sea movies. You got to think outside the box. No, not that box, Editor Pranav. That's an entirely different kind of box. Now you made me hungry. That's Jack in the Box. Moving along, a bit of breaking music news from the recent Grammy Awards concerning a couple of A-list Hollywood celebrities. Now to begin with, thanks to his first Grammy win for producing a movie about his favorite composer, John Williams, legendary filmmaker Steven Spielberg, now a member of the elite EGOT Club, meaning that he's now won an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony as well. No need to brag. I'm also an EGOT winner. You don't hear me bragging about it. And in one of the worst bungles in Grammy history, the fabulous Cher made an all-time blunder by mistakenly announcing late singer Luther Vandross as winner of the Record of the Year before quickly correcting herself moments later and handing the prize to a couple of rappers, including Kendrick Lamar. Yeah, big night at the Grammys over the weekend. It was Sunday night. I don't really follow pop music, but apparently an ill-behaved rabbit won some kind of a trophy. Bugs Bunny, or maybe the Trix Rabbit. I don't know. I don't know anything about popular music. And this is absolutely amazing. I had no idea that movie director Steven Spielberg could actually sing, but as we just said, he won a Grammy as well, although we're having trouble tracking down the song that he sang. So, producer Davey, I know you're monitoring. If you can track that down, if you find it, we'll play it right here tomorrow in its entirety. Also, by the way, in Cher's defense, and Editor Pranav, please do your thing here. Nobody pushing 80 looks that good, and clearly that was an AI-generated version of Cher. There's always a logical explanation. And while we're here, if you could, Pranav, please show us a picture of Cher in her prime back in the 1970s. That's the Cher we all grew up with, the one we all know and love. And with that, time to call it a wrap on the Big News Roundups. Have an awesome day today. Stay safe. And if you haven't done so already, it's sitting right there waiting for you. The old subscribe button. Just hit it a couple of times. And before we go, just almost forgot about this one. The Groundhog known everywhere as Puxatawny Phil has just spotted his shadow, meaning we're likely to be facing another 6 more weeks of dreaded winter. And I know what that means. Here in LA, that means temperatures could dip down to 78, maybe down to 75. I got to get a sweater. And now we're going to dim the lights and fade to black, and we'll see you right back here next time for another episode of the Big News Roundup.